With all that it's been going on over the last couple of years with COVID and the lockdowns and everything, I'm downsizing. And I'm going to share a little bit about that and why it's of value to you to have what's called intentional thrift and to reduce your footprint in your living spaces. So I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about intentionally choosing a smaller living space in order to have more economic and personal freedom. So one of the things that I do is I'm an analyst and I do work for large Fortune 100 companies. I do risk management work and process optimization, things like that. So I'm in the role of looking at how do we reduce our risk and how do we increase the efficiency of our day-to-day activities. Now I apply that in the environmental sciences world and I apply it also in the publishing world because those are two things that I use to support my career objectives. So I create podcasts, videos, newsletters. I create books, reports, and other materials to solve specific problems. Now, I focus on areas of expertise. Now, the reason I'm sharing this with you is because I have certain areas of expertise, just like you have certain areas of expertise. And those are things that are in your mind that cannot be taken away from you. They're concepts, they're approaches, they're belief systems that are in your mind and cannot be taken away. Yet we occupy our minds with physical activity. We are inside of a house. That house is on a piece of land. Now, many of the folks on Prosperity Homestead desire to have 5 or more acres of land. Now, I'm going to encourage you to try to get 100 or more acres of land, but we can talk about that at another time. Right now, many of them want homesteads, so you may want a homestead that's going to provide for you food security because we've had so many problems with supply chain, rising cost of food. You might want physical security because we've had viruses and we've had civil unrest, we've had other issues. You may also want mental and that, I guess, spiritual security of being in a home family environment, having that strong nuclear family or that strong community around you that helps you have, I guess it's the personal stability that's necessary to move forward in a world that is very challenging. You see a lot of sensation in the news, you see a lot of frustration. So these things, the levels of fear and the level of uncertainty often causes people to accumulate things. So they're going to hoard food or resources because those things could be in short supply. I'll share a little story about my grandparents who grew up during the Great Depression. When we went into their basement, they always had a lot of Coca-Cola product, but they were always had a lot of food and garden items just stocked up all the time. It was as if we were going to run out of food immediately. Now, they weren't going to run out of food, but they would save all their newspapers. They would save all of their organic waste and compost it. They would really focus on bringing in the maximum they need into the home, and then the minimum would go out. Ultimately, the garden provided fresh vegetables. There was always fresh apple. They have had a lot of fruit trees, so there's always fresh applesauce, and there was always preserved vegetables and things. And it was a great experience because during the Great Depression, they had nothing, and so they didn't want that to happen again. However, accumulating food, the resources to produce food, and a long-term storage of food is a different thing than accumulating that next outfit or that next piece of furniture or that next automobile or that next iPhone. And what I'm advocating here is that we reorient our focus, and this is what I'm doing in my life, and I'm finding it beneficial, but we reorient our focus to get more from what we have while cultivating and accumulating those things that matter most. So what means more, having a high income or having a high net worth? Well, having a high income is good, but you can lose that tomorrow because of some government change, an economic decision, a war or some other policy. But a high net worth is more difficult to disperse because it's very often in land or home, or it's in liquid assets, so you can easily convert it to something that's more valuable in the marketplace. So that's really what we're talking about here. So one of the things that I'm doing is I'm downsizing the physical things in my life to build better those things that are intangible and difficult to lose. So for example, I'm cleaning up around the house and I'm finding lists of podcasts that I've produced and the show notes related to those podcasts. Well, putting those out there, they're available for other people to learn from. I'm able to contribute to a community of experts or a community of individual practitioners, and I can create the materials once and use it many times. That's different than trying to be like a YouTube influencer or being somebody who's trying to get someone else to do things. I'm not putting materials out here so that you can do what I tell you to do because I'm the expert. I'm sharing the best practices that I've learned, which include intentional thrift, which includes accumulating intellectual property rather than physical assets, accumulating only those things that can have long-term value, like land. They aren't making any more land, and if you have land, you can easily convert it into food, shelter, and security. So I want to share these things with you because they are unusual approaches and very often influenced by individual cultures. So my grandparents were influenced by the interaction with the Great Depression, and that created a culture of thrift. Now, other people might see it differently. They might want to accumulate material goods because they don't want that comfort taken away. Well, I have a different approach that I'm not really concerned about comfort as much as I'm concerned about that long-term value. So I'm okay camping out in the woods to enjoy hiking and enjoy the natural environment versus maybe going to a resort. And this is going to be unique for you, but what I'd like you to do is take a moment to do 3 important things. Number 1 is decide what's important to you. You want to make a list of what is of value to you. Maybe right now having a 2,000 square foot house or a 5,000 square foot house or God forbid a 10,000 square foot house isn't right for you because it's causing you to spend a lot of time away from family maintaining the house or generating revenue to pay for the house. Now your situation could be different. Maybe your house or your home or your homestead is a source of income, so that 10,000 square foot house is a bed and breakfast, for example, and that goal might be different, and it may be bringing people to your property in order to become clients of your high value service. So again, number 1 is you're going to develop what is it that you desire. Now you may want to sit down with your family, you may want to look around your home and your community and see what you can deliver of value, but again, you're being a producer and you're producing in an area that brings you satisfaction and desire. Number 2, what things could be removed? Okay, so I have a big house and I don't need a big house. I can remove the square footage of the home to give myself more outdoor living space and to give myself less space that I actually need to clean. I don't know if you can tell by looking at me, I don't like to go around and have to vacuum the house. If I can't clean the whole house in 10, 15 minutes or even under an hour, then for like a deep cleaning, then it's too big. The space is too big. But I can't just go and demolition parts of the house. I need to downsize and then move to a new location. So that's a project that's going to come up here shortly, is that we're going to start building out a camp for recreational use. And you've seen the trail work and you've seen other things, but we're also going to expand that camp for perhaps long-term living. And it will be a smaller square footage house, highly energy efficient, and ultimately designed to serve, again, those number 1, the first things that you desire. Now, it could be different for you. Maybe you live in a small house today and you dream of a bed and breakfast. I have a friend here in the area that took his parents' home after he inherited it, and it was too big for him to live in, but he's since done some construction and turned it into a nice, quaint bed and breakfast that has a nice events area for weddings and recreational events and such. Again, we build a foundation on what it is that you desire, what it is that you believe will produce value in your community, and then we take away everything that distracts from that core objective. Now, number 3 is having a clear and written plan. One of the things about the way I'm set up is that I have written plans everywhere, and very often I publish those written plans because they are based on experience and expertise that I've gained over the years. But they're also a collection point for the expertise that I've gained from mentors educators and such. So as you're writing down your plan, you need to invest in the education that's necessary to make sure you have a useful and beneficial plan. I personally find books very useful. Some people like to go to courses, others like to have experiential learning, but the key to understand is that you're building on a foundation of your desires and your outcomes, your goals, what's important to you. You're removing those things that distract from that core objective, and then finally you're using a written plan so that you can stay focused. And let me give you one example. Perhaps you have a spiritual journey. So I'm getting a little up in age. I'm not that old, but I've had some experiences, and I've worked in the industry for a long time, and I'm looking at how the world is changing, and I want to develop my personal and spiritual belief systems so that I can have relaxation, meditation, that walk in nature that we've talked about in past videos. So I've actually put together a book of practice. Now it doesn't matter if you're Christian or if you're Jewish or you're Muslim. What is the book of practice that your family follows? Now, in many cases, you have the Bible, you have religious texts, and you may have that in there. But what is the practical application? That's an example of what I'm talking about, a written plan. For some people, it's a simple outline. For some people, it's a collection of essays and a collection of rituals. So, for example, what does your family do for holidays? Is there a family tradition that you'd like to keep going, and you're going to package it in such a way that it becomes what I call a book of practice, or kind of a plan, so that you make sure it happens? Because too many times I get a letter from somebody who's listened to the podcast and they'll say, I would love to have more land, but I don't have the time. I would love to have animals in a large garden, but I don't have the time. I would love to spend time with my family going camping, and we've talked about family camping, or spending time in nature, but I don't have the time. Well, you're not going to get the time. Everybody has the same 24 hours a day. But if you develop a very simple book of practice, it creates the intention, and then you can put it on the calendar, and then suddenly you make the time. Because work isn't the only thing. Accumulating assets isn't the only thing. Having a nice home and environment is not the only thing. All of that can be taken away in an instant. Again, as we saw with COVID, as we see with natural disasters. What you only truly have is what is in your mind and what is in your relationships. So how do we develop and cultivate those relationships? Again, it builds on some kind of focus. It removes those distractions, and it has a written plan. So a spiritual journey will have a book of practice that describes the rituals and the festivals and everything that you do. And a financial journey would have a financial plan. A homestead or developing land would have a design plan. What is that plan for you? Now, as always, you can ask your questions in the comments below. You can get involved with the different resources that we have here today. But do something, because ultimately the world will change whether or not you do, and it will keep moving forward whether or not you move forward. So I want to encourage you to start with the 3 steps that we talked about today and develop your plan for success, your plan for prosperity, and you can have that. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. You can ask questions in the comments below, or you can go to the website at www.prosperityhomestead.org and go to the contact page and ask your questions. Questions are the foundation of the newsletter and the podcast and all the resources we share here. So thank you for being a part of today's episode. And we're here to help landowners cultivate maximum utility value while gaining more of the things of value they have, the memories, the relationships, the lifestyle of being out in nature and being a good steward of the resources that we have, the blessings that we have. Again, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.